All right. Well, it looks like we're live and it looks like we have a ton of people here already, which is super exciting. There's always a little bit of a delay, so bear with Heather and I while we wait to make sure that all is good and we are here and live. I see it just popped up, so fantastic.
Yay. It looks like we have lots of friends joining us today too.
It
Might be a
does.
record.
It might be. I'm going to get this guy pulled up on my phone too. So when we click around to our other cameras, I can still see what's going on and capture as many questions as possible. Well, welcome friends to Hot Foiling 101. We're super excited that you're joining us today. And seems like there's a ton of excitement around this. So we're super excited to be able to bring this 1 hour free class to you.
Yes. It's one of the things that we get so many questions about, and we cover a lot of stuff in our weekly lives, but not everyone sees those. And so having all the information in one place just seemed like a good idea for everyone to be able to see.
Absolutely. So a couple of things before we get going in class, and we have a lot to cover. So we are probably going to go ahead and just get right into class soon. This will, of course, be available for replay not too long after class is over. So it will be accessible afterwards. I have put it in both our tips and tricks and our live replay playlists on our channel so that it will be easy to find. So I wanted to mention a couple of things before we get going. While Heather and I have hot foiled a lot and for a long time, we are by no means experts. We still have to troubleshoot. We still have to work through foiling issues just the same as everyone else. So keep that in mind as we're going through class. There may be some questions you ask that we're like, we've actually never tried that. But what we want to do is, since we have been foiling for a while now, we want to give you as much knowledge as we can of the knowledge that we have come upon as we have been on our foiling journey.
Yes, and I see someone asking about the different machine options. We're going to cover that a little bit. I know we're mostly going to be using our Spellbinders Glimmer because it's kind of where we both started and we're most familiar. I do have a Gemini foil press, so towards the end here, I'll be demoing that a little bit too. A lot of it's a preference thing. A lot of what we share will apply to both machines, but we're not machine experts anyway. And we're also only working with Pink Fresh foil plates. We wanted to make sure and mention that because there's a lot of other brands that we haven't worked with, and we're not as close to experts as we are with Pink Fresh. We are definitely not with other brands. So
no, so we won't be able to answer any questions about other brands' foil plates just because they're not ours and we've never used them. So we are really only experts in Pink Fresh branded hot foil plates. So we won't be able to answer those questions.
Yeah.
Real quick, I just am noticing a question here. There is a question from Christina asking if I am the owner of Pink Fresh, and no, I am not. I'm the marketing director. Heather is the creative director. The owner of Pink Fresh is Kinnery, who happens to be in the comments right now, commenting under the name Pink Fresh Studio.
Right. And we're going to do our best to watch questions today. We did open up and we have a few questions that people asked in advance.
Our notes right here.
Yeah. And we'll be taking turns doing different parts of this. So the other one of us who's not on camera at the time will probably be trying to catch those in the comments. But just know if we miss, we're going to do our best to cover everything we can. So we might miss them. There's a lot of people and a lot of comments.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm going to switch us off to the different view where it highlights the one person when they're talking. And I'm going to take over the first section. And I'm going to really just go over some very basics of hot foiling. Keep in mind, I'm only going to be using my Spellbinders Glimmer machine. So Heather will be demoing the Gemini, I think, more towards the end of today's class. So let me switch the view to speaker view, and then I'm going to get my camera flipped around real quick. And Heather, is that on me? I just want to make sure. I might need to just make sure it's on me first before I do this. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I've got it flipped over let me get my settings because that is really bright. So give me 1 second here while I get this toned down a little. There we go. Whew, that was bright. Okay, friends. So here is a Spellbinders glimmer machine. So the very first thing that I want to mention is when you start foiling, you want to plug it in and then you want to turn it on. And what you'll see is you will have a red power button over here in the left corner. And so what you're waiting for as your machine heats up is you're waiting for this second button that says platform ready to be green. So while we're waiting for the platform to heat up, I want to just talk about a couple of things. First things first, when you are first starting out with foiling, I would suggest to, to read through the manual of your machine all the way through, just so you're also getting the safety tips, you're learning about all of the different pieces of your machine. But the one thing that I did when I was first foiling and trying to really know the ins and outs of foilings is I would keep the step-by-step instructions open at all times so that if I wasn't really sure what the next step was, I could reference this. It also tells you the different spacer, the shim and the spacer pad, what you need them for on different types of papers. So these are really beneficial items to have with you. So magically, my platform is already heated up. It would take your platform longer to heat up if you were heating it up from being fully cooled. But in honest truth, I was foiling right up until before class. So my platform is magically already ready, as you can see here by the little green light. We're going to throw a foil plate on it in just a minute and foil just so you can see that happen. But there's a couple other basic things I wanted to go over as well. So there are different types of foils out there, friends. There are deco foils, and then there are heat foils. So more like the letterpress style heat foils, which is what the Glimmer machine is. It's what the Gemini foil press is. So this deco foil, this toner based transfer foil is not going to work. So you don't want to use this foil with hot foil plates. It's not going to work correctly. So if you have these, keep in mind that this is only for toner based foiling, not for hot foil plate foiling. So what you want to use when you're doing hot foil plate foiling is the correct type of foil. So this is the Glimmer brand, which obviously coordinates with the Glimmer hot foil system. I know that Gemini also makes foils, and they should work back and forth. So the Glimmer foil should work on the Gemini and vice versa. I've heard some things here and there that some people feel like they don't perform as well, but generally it should definitely work. If you guys are talking about the piece that you pull off being pretty snug and tight to your base, mine is too. I think that's pretty normal. And so you just have to pull real hard to pull the base out and put it back in. I think over time that does get a little bit easier to do. So keep that in mind as well. Yes, so the deco foil that I showed you, the stuff that's not the hot foil based foil, that works in like a laminator or a mink machine, which I think is just a laminator. Okay, so let's just do a real basic hot foiling. So we've got our platform ready. I'm going to go ahead and grab this beautiful hot foil plate. This is called Joyful Peonies. It's just a really lovely set of flowers. So we're going to put our hot foil plate on there, and we're going to go ahead and hit the timer button. And then we want to wait until this timer button is stop splashing. And that's when you know that it is time to run your machine through. So while the timer button, we're waiting for the timer button to go off, I wanted to mention that the Glimmer machine comes with two shim spacer pads. That's what they call them. This green one is the thin shim. The clear one is the spacer pad. Now, you should always test. Foiling is a lot of troubleshooting based on the pressure of your die cut machine. So what I know about my die cut machine is it's a little bit older. And so I need a little bit of help from paper shims here and there, not with every plate, but with some. So I have this 100-pound piece of white cardstock that I just slip in between the two solid shims that come with the machine. And that just helps me know that I have dialed my pressure in on my machine. You may need no shims, you may need two, you may need something that's a lower weight. And that's just part of the foiling process and troubleshooting a little bit. So you will see here that my timer has gone off. So I am going to go ahead and grab some foil, and we are going to foil this. So I'm doing this a little bit off camera just because I don't have a ton of desk space, but I'm just using some Aura colored foil. This is Spellbinder's brand. It's basically gold with a really lovely rainbow iridescent shine to it. It's my favorite foil. And it's definitely a workhorse in my craft area. So one thing that I find super helpful when doing this part is to remove the hot, the part that your hot foil plate is on from the base first before you make your sandwich. That way you're not shifting the foil. I just find that to be easier. So I'm going to go ahead and put the foil pretty side down. You want the pretty side or the colored or the foil side to go down on your hot foil plate. And then you want to add your cardstock. And so I'm going to put my cardstock the smoothest side down over top. And then we'll go ahead and add my shims to the top as well. So just place that on here. And I am going to move the base a little bit out of the way. And then I am going to just slowly and gently run this through my machine. So I typically run it front and back, just the once. I don't feel the need to run it through tons of times or keep going back and forth. I have found that as long as I have my shim system in place, that I am good to go on just those two runs through. So let's take a look and see if I got good results. So you just want to take your foil and peel it away. And I got absolutely perfect results. So if you hadn't gotten perfect results, that is where you think about troubleshooting a little bit. So maybe you need an extra shim. Maybe you needed to let your hot foil plate heat up a little bit longer. So there are easy ways to troubleshoot. If you don't get perfect foiling results that time. So a lot of times foiling is also dependent on the paper, and we are going to go more into that a little bit later. We have Heather did a lot of foiling on different papers just to give you some examples of what that looks like. Now, we're not going to do a ton over the solid foil plate today, but if you have the solid hot foil plate for that we offer, keep these negative pieces, because then you can go ahead and foil the negative piece and you'll have this beautiful bold gold flower to use on another card. So what we love about our solid hot foil plate is you get 2 for 1 basically out of one piece of foil. So someone is asking about paper type, and we are going to go over that a little bit more in depth in a minute, but we are huge proponents of the Hammermill Smooth 100-pound white cardstock. You know, we got really great foiling results on it every single time. And we do know it's a little hard to come by right now. The paper industry and as a whole is having a little bit of supply chain issues. So, but if you can find it, the Hammermill Smooth White 100-pound cardstock is a really great option for foiling. And it's the one with the chameleon on the packaging. Okay, friends, that is an intro into foiling. I am going to let Heather take over for the next part. And she's going to go into a little bit more hot foiling information. So Heather, feel free to take it over.
All right, I'm going to wait just a second and make sure it switches over. But I spent a good bit of my week this week, once we decided to do this, hot foiling like a crazy person, testing out all the cardstocks I had. I'm going to start right now by going through all of the white ones that I had that I tried. A little later, I'll go through some of the colored ones. But real quick, before I go through all of those, to keep everything consistent, just so it was across the board the same, I did them all in my Gemini. Oh, I think it's going back to you on there, Leah, at least on my, maybe it's not. I don't know if it muted or went back. Maybe it's not. I'll keep going. But I used my Aura hot foil for all of these. So they're all the exact same hot foil, the exact same machine. And then I did a couple options. I used the chevron background plate because it has a really good, there's some detail and some solid images, and I really wanted to play with that. And then I also did the Celebrate, which is a really intricate detail image. So it kind of showed all the options. I'll also quickly just show you through the reverse that I did with the solid foil plate, so you can kind of see how all of those worked. I was really surprised pleasantly on some of these. Now I know Leah mentioned for her that she needs to use a shim with her machine. I found that I did better without a shim because I ended up with more overfoiling. Some of that's just variation in the machines and your depth. So just know your machine. If you're not having great results, that's a great way you can test. So I just have little notes on here to show what I had. One thing I did want, so this first one is that hammer mill that we talk about all the time. So this was my original, and as you can see here, I got great results on that. There's a tiny, tiny bit of overfoiling, but just enough that I could easily wipe it off with my fingers. And then of course, the reverse image of that. And then one little thing that I discovered as I went through here, I ran my Celebrate through, let me grab my plate here real quick. So this one right here, I ran it through my machine this direction, and you'll notice I got a little bit of hot foiling there on the edge of that. When I started running it this way, I got much, much better results. So even something little like that, if you're getting overfoiling one direction, think about tipping it a different way. But as you can see on there, I got fabulous detail and also the more solid and bold image. And then one new thing I actually just got in the mail yesterday. Let me grab the packaging for this. This is the Spellbinders Glimmer Specialty Cardstock. I wanted to try this to compare. This is, it's a synthetic, there we go, synthetic cardstock. And it's kind of what they sell and recommend as a specialty. It's really smooth, and that seems to make the biggest difference generally on hot foiling. Now, it also says it works really well with Yepo inks also. But on this one, I, again, had really great results. I did have one little spot, and ignore that because those two little spots, I had a little moisture on my hand and got them on there, and that messed them up. But this really foiled beautifully, and it's super shiny. So if you're a little unsure or you can't get your hands on the hammer mill, this one is a great option. Again, great with the Celebrate as well. One thing to keep in mind is it does blend a little bit different. It's not going to soak up your ink. So if you're doing hot foiling and you're going to do ink blending over the top. I did a little sample or a test on one with my Pink Fresh inks. And I kind of noticed that it almost made the inks look a little more like a distress oxide. It didn't absorb them in as much, but it was still super duper fun. And yes, it is a little more pricey. I would recommend this more if you're starting and you kind of want to get a feel for hot foiling. If you're worried about, having the easiest method, and also mainly more for backgrounds, maybe not as much when you're going to do ink blending as an option. All right, and then here is another, these are my, like I said, ignore all my little notes here, so I didn't lose my place on here. I just had to scratch them out somehow. So this was really interesting to me. This is the Gina K Luxury White cardstock. And I did this 2 times, if this is the one that I'm thinking of, yes. So the first time, this was the very first thing I hot foiled. And when I first did it, my plate wasn't as hot as some of the later ones. So this was the first, I just heated it up till it said it was ready. And then I went ahead and hot foiled. And I didn't, I had a good bit of overfoiling. It still gave a good image, but there was a little bit of overfoiling. And then, again, on my solid. The next time I did it, I pulled out one to do at the end when my plate had heated up more, and all the rest were after that. And I got absolutely perfect results right on the first try. So it was just something I kind of wanted to note, that if any plate that you're not maybe having initial fabulous results, test that out. But this was the Gina K Luxury White. Then I also tried the Simon Says Stamp 120 pound. It's a super smooth cardstock. I also had really great results with this, although same thing as before, I did have a little bit of overfoiling. I don't know if you can kind of see that on there, but it still worked overall very, very well. And it's a good option too, because it's a little bit thicker. I felt like it gave almost like you got a little more impression on the cardstock there as well. All right, this is another one that surprised me. I have some of the Accent opaque cardstock. It's a super heavy weight. I think it's 120 pound. It's very solid. It's a little bit of a crisper white. I didn't feel like the texture was as smooth, so I didn't expect it to work well. For me, it did. Now, I'm not saying all the time that would work. Depending on the foil you're using, it might not, but I was really pleasantly surprised that I got fairly good results with that. Again, a tiny bit of overfoiling, a little more on the detailed sentiments. I had a little more overfoiling that you can kind of see on there, but it rubs off with your finger, but it does affect the solid image on there as well. So as I keep going through these though, my big takeaway would be whatever cardstock you have, if one doesn't work, test something else, test your shims. I mean, that's what I did, is I just spent some time playing, get familiar with your machine, get familiar with your cardstock, kind of just play with it. Okay, this is the Michaels, the heavier weight that Michaels sells. Yeah, so for these, I saw someone asking a question. I just used my Glimmer machine for all of these. Towards the end, I am going to demo the Gemini as well. But for these, so the Michaels, I had quite a bit of overfoiling. I don't know if you can see that on there. Surprisingly, fairly good results. And I wonder if a lot of the good results I had on these had a lot to do with the foil. If you're starting, we really, really highly recommend this Aura hot foil. It just, I mean, I don't think I've ever had bad results from that, even as you can tell by this wide range of different cardstocks. But I definitely had more overfoiling on that Michaels cardstock, and then you can see that affected the solid image from the solid foil plate. Okay, moving on. Here's another one. I did not have any of the 80 pound, but I did test the Nina 110 pound. I didn't expect this because I think I've tried the 80 pound before and I didn't have. I might have even tried this. But at least this time with this hot foil and the Pink Fresh plate, it worked fairly beautiful. I had a little bit of overfoiling more on the detail there on the Celebrate, but my big solid image came out great. I don't think I even had any overfoiling. So for me, I know a lot of people say that the thinner cardstock works better. I actually had pretty good luck, even with the thicker cardstock. All right. Another one that I had in my stash was the Copic Express. It's made for Copic markers, alcohol markers. It's a super smooth. And as I would have expected, this one worked really well. It's a nice smooth cardstock. So both versions came out pretty lovely. So that was an easy one. And then I also did just a little bit, excuse my cough still, a little bit of playing on watercolor paper. So this is Strathmore. I did the Bristol Smooth first. I did find I had some imperfection. I did not use a shim. I believe a shim would help. When I did the Celebrate, I used a shim and I went back and forth multiple times and I had great luck with that. And the same with the Celebrate. I used a shim, went over it multiple times and had fairly good luck with that. And then the Solid Image, the same thing. And I did have, in fact, some of my pieces that didn't foil originally came off. So I think the biggest fix for that would be use a shim to get more pressure on the texture of the watercolor paper, as well as multiple times through. So you just have more time with the pressure. And then I used the watercolor that has a lot of texture. Same thing, I didn't get a really great result there on the textured watercolor paper. I think I probably could have fixed that with more weight and pressure, because I did do that on my detailed sentiment and had great success with that. Okay, so there's all the watercolor. Acetate, I did do a little bit with that. Forgot to write that on here, but this is acetate. Okay, this one was a little tricky. It worked, but it was definitely, it worked actually really great on the Solid Image. I'm hoping you can see that through here. So that one worked really well. This is heat resistant acetate, very important there to note that. I had a little more trouble with the Celebrate. I kind of didn't get, let's see, I'm looking at the wrong one. So the first time I went through, let me pull that white cardstock out. You can see I didn't get a great image there. I'm hoping that shows up. Acetate's really hard to show. The second time I used a shim. So this was no shim and just going through. This time I used a shim and went back and forth multiple times. I still had not incredibly great results. I need to play with that one more a little bit, but for acetate, my experience was a little more of a Solid Image, was a little more successful. And then finally, Leah and I both tried, and there might be a trick to this, but like we said, we're not experts. Vellum, we had a lot of problems with that. Neither of us were able to really successfully do that. So that was that version of that with vellum. I mean, it still has kind of a cool effect. So if you don't want a really solid foiled image, you know, you can get away with that. I had a little better luck on just the detail sentiment, so that might help a little bit. And the question about heat resistant acetate. Let me grab. This is what I used for that sample I did. Paper Wishes. There's a few different, and I've interchangeably used them, and they all seem to work about the same. Okay, I think that covers all of the white cardstock. I'll go over all of my experience with colored cardstock in a little while, but I think we're gonna hop back over to Leah, and she's gonna just talk briefly about the solid foil plate. So Leah, feel free to unmute, and I will mute myself and switch over.
Friends, before I jump into the solid plate, I did also some foiling on a little bit of specialty paper too that I wanted to mention real quick. So this is some foiling on watercolor paper. So I chose, rather than doing one of those big bold backgrounds, just because when you're watercoloring, you're probably going to want to more than anything color in an image. So I chose that Joyful Peonies image and foiled it on watercolor paper. Now this is our unreleased watercolor paper that we will be releasing at some point this year. But I just wanted to go and show it to you that it foiled beautifully. And then when you can absolutely apply watercolor over top of the foiling and it doesn't hurt it at all. Now, I also did foil a sheet of Yupo paper and I got stunning, amazing results. Now, of course, Yupo paper is expensive. It's more expensive. So this would, I think, would be definitely be something that you would use it for a more special occasion. And also when you're not wanting to stencil or ink blend over top of it. Now, I don't use alcohol inks very much, but because this is a paper you can use alcohol inks on, it's possible that you could try to do that as well. I just am unsure if the foiling would react to it at all. And then finally, this was my result on vellum. And as you can see, I didn't get good results either. So I'm not sure if there is a trick to foiling on vellum or if it's just not a good surface for foiling. Our watercolor paper has a little bit of texture to it. It's not as textured as some, but it does absolutely have a texture to it. And I got perfect foiling results all the way through. Now, I had noticed someone said that they were hoping that we would demonstrate another round of another foil demonstration. So I can go ahead and do that real quick while I'm talking about the solid hot foil plate. So I'll just really quick demo this one more time. I have already turned my machine on, but if you're new and you haven't done this before, you would click your machine on and you would wait for this green light that tells you the platform is ready. My green light's already there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my timer button. And that basically gives it basically gives the hot foil plate enough time to heat up to foil. So we're going to foil. This is our heart grid plate, and it's actually a great segue into talking about our solid hot foil plate once we do it. So here is the basics. And while this is heating up, I did see another question roll through as Heather was going over the different types of white cardstocks that are out there. And I wanted to answer it real quick. Someone was asking if the Glimmer machine works with the Gemini. And it's possible someone in the comments did answer your question, but I do want to put that out there for everyone to know as a foiling basic. You would need to buy the foiling system that it works with your die cut machine. So no, the Spellbinder Glimmer hot foil system works, of course, with Spellbinder's die cut machines, the Platinum 6 and such. And then I also believe it works with the Sizzix die cut machines that are out there. And there may be a couple more. I'm pretty certain that Spellbinders has an entire list on their site with what works with the Glimmer. Now, the Gemini foil press works with the Gemini Junior. And I think if you have an extra accessory, it will also work with the larger sized Gemini. There is one more hot foil system out on the market that I am blanking the name of it right now. Neither of us have it, and I am not completely sure which machines it works with. I think it works maybe with Sizzix machines, but it's like the Couture Creations Go Press or something like that. I may be totally wrong, but so that big long answer is just telling you that you need to buy the foil machine that works with your die cut machine. So that may be the Glimmer, that may be the Gemini, just dependent upon what you have. Okay, so our timer button has gone off. So I'm going to cut a little bit of foil and we'll do one more demo for people that are just joining us. So I'm grabbing some rose gold foil this time around. So we just get a little bit a different look here. So I have just cut it down to a 6-inch strip. And once again, I'm going to release the platform from the base first. I just find that easier than adding my sandwich of stuff and doing it. So I have released it. You want to go ahead and place your foil with the pretty side down.
and then go ahead and add your cardstock with the smoothest side that you want to foil on the smoothest side possible. And then, as I mentioned, I do need a paper shim when I'm running through my machine because my machine's a little bit older. So I add that 100-pound paper shim. Oops, I actually prefer these to be flipped around. So let's do that real quick. And then we will go ahead and run this through my platinum real quick. And I like to just run this through back and forth once. And I do it slowly and gently. And then I'll come back once. And I've really found that I don't really feel like foiling needs to be run through much more than that. I think that you are apt to get more overfoiling. And all we mean by overfoiling is when some of the foil sticks to the paper that shouldn't. And I think you're more apt to get overfoiling when that happens. And I did get a little bit of overfoiling actually on this one, but that's okay. I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can alleviate that. So it's possible I did not need the 100-pound shim with the heart grid. I maybe should have gone with my little lower weight shim, but this is actually a perfect little way into a quick basic that I wanted to show you. So there are these great sand erasers out there that can help you remove that excess foiling that sticks around. It's something new that I have found out about, and it's kind of cool. It doesn't erase it completely, but it at least minimizes it so that you feel confident using that piece on a project of some sort. I have also decided that if the foiling is imperfect, if it has just a couple of imperfections here and there, I'm not going to worry too much about it. Like, this is handmade, not Hallmark, and it's okay if there are small imperfections here and there. So speaking of the solid hot foil plate, now we are just going to, I'm just going to quickly go over the solid hot foil plate because here is a quick announcement. We are going to do a 1-hour free class on the solid plate, an entire class on it. So be on the lookout for that. We're hoping it will be next week, but no promises there that it will be. But hopefully next week, we are going to do a 1-hour class on our solid hot foil plate and all of the different ways that it can be used. So I actually had already had this done from when the heart grid plate released. So here is the heart grid design. And then here is the heart grid done with the solid foil plate. So super fun for getting two designs in one, basically. We have a lot more tips on the solid hot foil plate, and we are going to go into those more in depth when we do a full class. But here are just a few things I want to mention about the solid hot foil plate. It is very big. It's a very big surface. So our suggestion is when you put it on your machine, a lot of times actually let it heat up with your machine. So when you flip your machine on, go ahead and throw your solid hot foil plate on it and let it start to heat up with your machine. Second, I typically hit the timer button twice with this before I go ahead and try to foil with it. You just want to make sure it's nice and hot. When you are trying to adhere an entire solid piece of foil to cardstock, you can never have too much heat or too much pressure. So making sure it's really hot, and then also dialing in if you need some paper shims when you're using it is going to be important. I have to use 2 paper shims when I'm using my solid hot foil plate, a 100-pound and a 65-pound. So definitely keep that in mind. So here is it. Last thing, save the date. We are going to do a 1-hour long free class all about the solid hot foil plate, very, very, very soon. So be on the lookout. I'm sure we'll do exactly like what we did with this. We'll create an event for it. We'll send out some emails and going
all of that. Jean is asking what we mean by the solid hot foil plate. What we mean is this plate has no design on it. It is just one big piece of metal. Whereas if you find this one, so here's the Joyful Peonies. So yes, this is solid metal, but it has a design in it. And the design is what's going to hot foil. This is one solid piece of metal, which is going to allow you to take that negative foil piece that you create with either, I've got the heart grid or the Joyful Peony, and allow you to foil that negative piece so that you basically get two pieces out of one. It resolves all of the waste that can happen with foiling, because you're no longer having to throw away that negative foil piece. So that's what we mean by the solid plate. Okay, friends, that is all about the solid plate. I am going to let Heather take it back over. She's going to go over foiling on colored cardstocks. And then when we come back to me, I'm going to give you some tips on how to line up the stencils with a hot foiled image. And then we're also going to go over a little bit on colored foils, but I'm going to go ahead and give it back over to Heather.
Okay, and I have some colors to show you. Real quick disclaimer, I did these exactly the same as all of the white. Again, I wanted everything really consistent to compare between. So same foil plates, same technique. I used no shim for my first one, and then I used a shim for the one with the solid foil plate. There's one exception, but pretty much only tested one color from the brands I had. I don't have every brand of colored cardstock, and there was no way I could test every color. So there's one later down that I didn't get results that were really great on one color. So I tested a different color and I got better results. So that's my disclaimers. I'm just showing you on one color of each of the brands that I had, but I wanted to just kind of share those results so you could see. So the first one I tried is Spellbinders, and Spellbinders has a lot of colored cardstock that I believe they actually specifically made to work well with hot foiling. So that's something to keep in mind. You can see I had beautiful results on my detailed, probably some of the best, even compared to the white cardstock on this particular color. Beautiful on that chevron, and the same with the reverse. I kept my foil too small there, so ignore that. That's just where the foil ran out. So really great results with the Spellbinders. And I don't remember which, I have the brand, I don't remember which color specifically each of these are, so I'll just apologize in advance for that. This is Simon Says Stamp. I do know this color is Audrey just because I remember it, and I had beautiful results on that. And I also had great results on this. I did notice, I don't know why I left this on here. I really don't know why I left that on there. I must have just missed removing that. But yes, the Simon Says Stamp version worked beautifully as well in this color. Lawn Fawn, I also had really great success with. It foiled beautifully, some of the best. I actually was expecting colored cardstock to be a lot harder to foil on because I haven't done that much, but it really did work well. Gina K cardstock, this is the one color I had of this that I tried, and again, beautiful. I had a tiny bit of overfoiling on that T there, but not even noticeable really, and beautiful on that solid. And the weight of it, a lot of these, the weight, you can kind of feel that letterpress effect with the hot foiling as well. I have some reverse confetti cardstock. This also gave me absolutely beautiful results. Again, I had a lot more good results than I expected to have in the grand scheme of things. This is some Hero Arts. I had beautiful results on the Hero Arts on the detail one. I had a tiny bit of overfoiling, and I don't know if it was just the weight of the cardstock that it was a little bit heavier. So my reverse image, you can kind of see the solid plate. You only get as good of a reverse image as you have no overfoiling on the original. If you have overfoiling, then your solid plate image is going to be a little less. I didn't have any colors from Altenew, but I did have this cardstock. I think it's called Spicy Yogurt or something like that, but it's just kind of a rustic speckled, and it foiled beautifully on this one. I actually really love this color with the foil. I'm kind of excited about these. Nikki, as far as 80 pound or 100 pound, yes, some of them are 80, some of them are 100. I don't have that written down. I just went by the brand. So whatever weight their cardstock, and weight can be kind of because you can get 100-pound cardstock, but it's different depending on what cover or whatever. So I didn't really make note of that. Most of these are fairly heavy, solid, good weight. This is some paper tray ink cardstock. I had fairly good results with this one, a tiny, tiny bit of overfoiling on the Celebrate, just on that E, not much. And I did find I had a little more overfoiling on this one. I didn't test another of this color, but I know I foiled on them before in other colors and had similar results. So it was kind of, maybe wasn't, and fixing the overfoiling, I'm less worried about the overfoiling because all of my overfoiling, I don't even need a sand. I mean, it was gentle enough overfoiling that just my fingertips, I can wipe all of these off. So the overfoiling doesn't concern me much as far as on the original, but it does affect, if you're using the solid foil plate for the reverse, it will affect just how perfect that image is. So when I refer to the overfoiling, a lot of what I'm talking about, it has more to do with that. Am I going to be able to use the negative image? Now here's one of the ones. So Concord 9th, the first one I foiled with here, I did have reasonably decent results on the more detailed Celebrate on this deep green. The solid foil, I did keep this on here so you could see. I didn't have great luck with the solid on that one. I also didn't have fabulous on the more solid image or the reverse. But then I pulled out, just out of my stash, some of their red cardstock, and you can kind of feel some of the texture is just different between colors sometimes. And this red, I did the reverse of the heart grid that I just had sitting around, and that one foiled beautifully. So even if you're using colored cardstock from one brand and maybe a color, kind of just try and feel them. Like this one, you can feel a little more of the bumpy texture. And I probably could have done these just like the watercolor paper with a shim or extra heat or running it through a little bit more. But then as I felt through and felt, oh, this red's pretty smooth, let me try that. And it worked great. So, and then I don't know how easily available this is. I know a lot of people still have it in their stash. So since I still had some, I went ahead and used the Basil, the Card Shop. And again, I had fairly good results, tiny bit of overfoiling, but nothing major on that main image. And as far as favorites, I don't know that I can say because some of my favorites depended on the color. Like I really loved that Altenew, that spicy yogurt color. I did feel like the Spellbinders probably was, if you were going to get one, I know that they specifically developed it and tested it for hot foiling. So if you were to pick one color to try, I think I would be tempted to say start with the Spellbinders. But if you have other colored cardstock in your stash, my biggest advice would be just to try it. Give it a test with what you have. Maybe not a big solid image, or maybe just do, trim a little piece of the cardstock and do a little part of that big image just to go, okay, does it work? But boy, I can't tell you how much fun I'm going to have putting cards together with all my hot foil backgrounds. So, all right. So that kind of wraps up my best advice on colored cardstock. So I'm going to send it back over to Lea. I think she is going to demo. We've talked about just hot foiling, just as we generally do with larger pieces of cardstock. But she's going to demo something called the hinge method that a lot of people prefer to use. So I'm going to mute myself and it's all yours, Lea.
Okay, before I get to the hinge method, I did want to show you guys something because Heather had excellent results when she was foiling on colored cardstocks. And I didn't have as great of results. So where Heather said she got a little bit more overfoiling, I got quite a bit of underfoiling, and I did use my shim. So I think you just have to kind of try it out and see if it works for you. The great thing is if it doesn't work out, you can still use the other side of the cardstock for something else. But it just goes to show that all machines are a little different. Pressures are a little bit different. And I didn't get the most fantastic magical results doing those big backgrounds on colored cardstock. I tend to do sentiments on colored cardstock and they turn out well. But I did not have as good of results with the backgrounds as Heather did. So keep in mind that sometimes you may just have to add more shims, and it's possible I just picked cardstocks that had a little bit too much texture to them. So I just wanted to mention that as well. So Heather mentioned the hinge method. So we're going to do a little bit of a 2-in-1 here because I know that we're closing in on our hour. So, but let's go ahead and I will kind of teach both methods in one here. So I also wanted to have a little discussion about colored cardstocks colored foils, because honest truth, friends, they're a little bit more finicky than the golds and the silver and even the rose gold. So one of them that I have had a little bit of trouble with in the past is this purple. It's gorgeous. I love it. I think it's called lavender. But I do get a bit of overfoiling with it. So let's just cut off a piece of this foil real quick. And I will show you the hinge method while we do a little bit of color cardstock. So the washi tape hinge method, you've noticed that I don't use it very often if you frequent lives at all, but some people swear by it so that they make sure that their foil stays right in the place, or excuse me, their foil plate stays right where they want it. Now, this is not a method I came up with. I learned this from Janis Makula when I was first starting out with foiling. So the gist of it is you place your hot foil plate wherever you want it on your cardstock, and then you add a little washi tape hinge to it. So then you pull that up and you put make sure I'm doing this the right way. Nope. You want to make sure absolutely make sure that you put your foil down the right way. So you add your foil pretty side down on the hot foil plate. And then, honest truth, friends, so that we don't have too much overfoiling, I am going to go ahead and just trim this side down, and we can use that for something else, maybe a smaller sentiment at a later date. And I am going to trim off that excess, because what we have found is if you trim down a little bit closer, that also prevents overfoiling. But so I've got this whole piece. It's all hinged together. I'm going to go ahead and put it on my Gemini machine here, and I'm going to hit the timer button. And so now the process is exactly the same. And my hope is that this is going to show you the somewhat finicky issues that we have with colored foil. That I have with color foiled, and what I hear from a lot of people that they have some issues with colored foil. And if it foils perfectly, I do have an example sitting here next to me where I did get that little bit of unusual overfoiling that happens. So that's the washi tape hinge method. Super simple. I tend to not use it. I tend to just cut a much larger piece of cardstock and make sure that the thing will be fully covered. My foil plate will be fully covered with both foil and paper. But if you want to be more frugal with both the foil and your cardstock, this is absolutely a method that will work wonderfully. Okay, timer button went off. Something for you guys to know for me that I learned about my machine and my die cut machine is that I don't need shims on these dainty sentiments like this. So I have removed all of my paper shims, and we are going to just run this through real quick. I've also learned with these nice dainty sentiments that I only need to run it through the machine once. I don't need to do the back and forth on it at all. Now, something that's a little tricky with the washi tape hinge method is getting it back up without burning yourself, because it is attached to that hot foil plate. So my suggestion is to, if I can find it, is to grab that little tool that you have and just grab it, and then you can take it and put it off of your machine. So let's take a look. And of course I got perfect foiling results. So let me grab my other piece where I didn't have perfect foiling results. This one I happen to do with, here is the purple, and I've already kind of erased it, but you will see here where I just got some overfoiling that doesn't wipe away with your finger. And that is where these great little sand erasers come into place. And you can just do your best to erase those out. I had the same thing happen with my red foil. You'll see that there are a couple little pieces of foil here and there that stuck behind, and they don't rub off with your fingers. So sand erasers are great for that. The other thing to keep in mind is these have dies that coordinate with them. So it's possible you may cut away that little bit of overfoiling that you get from colored foils. Of course, and we joked about this when we were planning class. I was like, watch, I'll get perfect foiling results from the colored foil when I go to demo it. And sure enough, I did. So but if you happen to get a little bit of overfoiling with colored foils, the really great thing is get one of those sand erasers. This was like, I think like $3 or $4 on Amazon. And you can rub away that little bit of overfoiling and it works perfectly great. So I have Heather, we can probably go about 5 minutes over, because I know a lot of people are asking about foiling with a die. And I did want to go ahead and showcase that, because the hinge method actually kind of works really well with that. So I'm going to do that really quickly just to show what that looks like. So keep in mind, when you are foiling with a die, that this is going to look very, very different than foiling with a hot foil plate. Dies, the lines on the dies are much thinner than on a hot foil plate. So I want to showcase this, but I think I forgot to trim another sheet of paper down. So give me 1 second here while I do this. Okay. So this is another great one for the hinge method. So grab some washi tape and put it on the back of your cardstock. And then go ahead and get it lined up with whatever die it is that you want to use. I'm happening to use our brand new Sparkling Diamonds die that we just came out. It's a great little background die. It's got a fun texture to it. And we're going to go ahead and use some Aura cardstock again. I'm just going to trim out a piece real quick. And we're going to get it underneath that hinge. You really want to get it underneath that hinge so that you have foil fully covering the die. Okay, so we have our die and our hinge. So go ahead, put it on your platform and hit the timer button. This is actually really, really cool. Now, one thing I have learned about foiling with the die is I actually need both of my paper shims for this one, just because the lines are so thin. So we are going to see how this works. Now, it worked perfectly the first time I did it. So here's hoping it still works perfectly live, but if it doesn't, that's okay. We can just try again. But while this is heating up, I did see a question roll through about lining up our stencils to a foiled a foiled image. So as you know, a lot of our hot foil products, we offer coordinating items with it, like stencils. So one thing to mention is when you're using the stencils with the foiled image, you're going to ignore the notches in the corner, and you are going to actually line up the stencil to the foiled image itself. And so what you want to look for is, I suggest just looking for an image in like the lower left corner and an image in the upper right corner, and get those two lined up. And then really truly the rest of the stencil falls into place. And then you just tape it down and ink blend like normal. We tested this before we came out with foiling products to make sure, and ink blending does not affect the integrity of your foil machine or your foiling at all. So it's as easy as that to line up all of your stencils. So I just wanted to give that a little tip. This class wasn't really about stenciling with them, but because we do offer those as complimentary or as, coordinating products, I thought I would give that quick overview. Okay, friends, my timer's gone off. So let's go ahead and remove this from the base, and let's go ahead and run it through our machine and see how it turned out. So the consensus is when foiling with die cuts is sometimes they don't foil well at all, and sometimes they overfoil. So you just have to pray, you just have to play, you just have to practice a little bit and see what works best for your machine. I think probably the biggest learning thing to keep in mind with foiling is just troubleshooting. It's a troubleshoot process. So if something underfoils, you need more pressure or you need more heat. If something overfoils, you might need less pressure going on. So there is that. So let's go ahead and just see how this turned out. And it actually turned out actually quite well. It is very, very discreet, but it's there and it's pretty, and it's just another use of another use for your dies. All right, so I am going to pass it back over to Heather, who I think is going to do some, give some ideas on maybe foiling with black foil and maybe using the Gemini machine.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to kind of blow through a few things because we're officially over time, which I'm fine with, but we want to try and not go too quickly for you. Really quick, I wanted just to touch on, I had recently gotten some black glimmer foil. And since Leah didn't have that, I kind of played with it. I found this to be one of the trickiest ones that I'd used yet. So I'm not going to demo because we're running out of time, but I just wanted to kind of show you or tell you, kind of explain some of my discoveries. I felt like it was especially sensitive to the heat of the hot foil, which the great news is when you get it dialed in right, you can get a really great image. But I had problems with it sliding and moving. These are all done on hammer mill cardstock. So these were a great, if you're doing black foil, I highly recommend the hinge method or just taping it in place so things don't move. I went through a few different, I don't know if you can see horrible overfoiling there. And it's because I set things down and it shifted and the foil had started to stick where it had first touched. So when I finally went and did the hinge method, I got beautiful results. So definitely taping them in place, and then the reverse foil did beautifully. So it would almost give the effect of like a heat embossed in white or something without the texture. And then I used Les Vine's hot foil plate, and you can see where it shifted right at the top there. And I can have some smudges in my foiling. And again, the same thing, I put it in without using the hinge method and holding it in place, and it shifted a little when it first went in, and that just kind of muddled that up a little bit. So if you're doing black, just be aware that it is a little bit sensitive on that. But look at the reverse image of that with the black. It comes off really easily, which is a bonus for using the solid foil plate in the reverse. So I just quickly wanted to touch on that just a little bit since I noticed it was quite a bit different than the other colored cardstocks. All right, and then I promised we would demo the Gemini foil press. So, and let me just say, I am by no means an expert. I've used it a little bit, mostly just to test things out and make sure they work. But here's how not an expert I am. I didn't look right at the heat settings. So the samples I did earlier, I'm going to show you how to go through the process. But I did one run through with the Gemini branded rose gold hot foil. And I got, of course, beautiful results. I didn't realize I used the correct time based on the manual. Oh no, I think I had it on too long. Okay, let's see if I can get this back on here. That's what happens apparently when you leave it too long, it auto shuts off. I was worried it would take too long to heat up. So there's a lot of advice at the front that tells you if you're just using normal paper, the size of the die, the temperature, and the time. I'll leave that to you to look and see. Because I'm using a large die and I'm just using standard cardstock, I'm doing the timer for 30 seconds. I should have done the timer at low, but it worked great on the higher heat setting. So I don't know that it would affect anything. But again, I got beautiful results. And then I also used a Spellbinders Glimmer, and this might be why this worked better for me. I think this is copper or something. And I've tried to interchange between the machines before and not always had great luck, but I'd heard higher heat settings help. And apparently that must be the case because that higher heat setting and the Glimmer hot foil, I had one little tiny bit here that on my reverse image that didn't quite get on there. But I got really great results. So test out if you have the Gemini and you want to switch between. One other thing that I want to note, the Gemini comes with, we talk a lot about the solid foil plate. The Gemini comes with, it's just a thin metal shim. It does work for the reverse foiling. You have to play a little bit with the shims and the weight and some of that kind of stuff. So if you have the Gemini, I do recommend that you test that out first before you buy the solid foil plate. We don't want you to buy something you don't need. But I did find I had better luck. I'm going to start that timer now. Better luck with the solid foil plate on the Gemini. That's what I used for both of those samples I showed. But really quick, just a very brief walkthrough of how a Gemini works. It's got the 3 different heat settings. You plug it in, you turn the power on and hit this power. Make sure you do both. You choose what heat setting. It defaults to the low heat setting. And then you set your timer based on what it shows in the manual and you go from that. And as soon as the timer goes off, it'll beep at you. And that's where you're going to set your foil on, set your piece of cardstock on, set your top plate on. I'm going to go take this off camera to my Gemini because I can't fit all of it on my desk. So I'll be right back in 1 second. Turn this off now because I'm not going to use this again. We'll go ahead and pull this off and let's just see. There's our beautiful, perfectly hot foiled image. So I didn't want to spend too much time there. I just wanted to, we promised a quick demo and I wanted, if you're debating between machines, if you have a Gemini electronic machine, this is the machine that will work with that. If you have a manual machine like a Big Shot or anything else, then you're going to want the Gemini, the Spellbinders, the Glimmer machine. And I think we're running out of time today, but I did test. I have a Big Shot and I went ahead and tested hot foiling with my Big Shot with the Spellbinders Glimmer. They worked beautifully together. So no issues on that. And then one other thing I promised, I know a few people have talked about it, but when we say we're not experts, I was playing with the vellum and trying to test that out and see if I could get good results. And vellum, it's kind of transparent. You don't really think about it. Well, I didn't realize I didn't have it on there. And I just showed you guys, I've spent probably 10 hours just this week hot foiling. And then I still did this. So it happens to everybody. You also might accidentally foil your hot foil plates. It still works fine. I used it again after this. It doesn't come off on your paper. It's on there. But what works to clean all of it off is acetate. I didn't have any just straight acetate, but I did have some nail polish remover that is not the acetate or acetone. I'm sorry. I'm saying acetate, acetone. So I just wanted to show you how easily, and you could kind of dampen it down, but I just found if I poured a little bit on there, I partly cleaned this off earlier. And then a dry paper towel, and it just comes right off. So there's just a quick little look at how I'll finish cleaning the rest of it later. But then I also like to use a wet wipe afterwards just to make sure I get all that residue off and don't leave it on my plate. So if you hot foil and you want to keep things pristine and clear, you can still make it that way again. And one final tip with that, my bottle kind of got goopy and I got some on my desk and it left kind of a sticky residue. Rubbing alcohol worked perfectly instantly to clean it off. So I might try that on my plate as well and see if it cleans off any residue there. But I think that covers, I'm going to go ahead. Leah's going to pop back on. I'm going to switch my camera around and we're going to wrap this up, I think.
All right, friends. Well, we went a little over our hour, but we had a lot of information we wanted to pack into this class. We probably didn't even cover everything, but we definitely tried to give you as much as we could in this one live class to really get you started going with hot foiling. Also to be, maybe help you make a decision if hot foiling is you. We know that not everyone has the room for it. We know that it may not be in everyone's budget. So we just wanted to really give you as much information as we possibly could about hot foiling basics and help you make a decision, help give you tips if you're struggling, and also show you that you're not the only people that struggle with foiling. Heather got beautiful results foiling uncolored cardstock, and my results were bad.
Yes, definitely experimenting. That's, when we get questions about stuff, the first questions were always like, well, what paper did you use? What cardstock, what machine, what pairing, because all of those little factors influence some, even Leah and I both using the exact same machine. I had better results with no shim. She has better results with a shim. Mm-hmm. So like she said, the best advice, if you're not getting enough, more heat and or more pressure, play with those, let them heat longer, add more pressure.
Yep.
Or if you're getting a lot of overfoiling, back those down a little if you can.
Back off of it.
Yes.
I also wanted to interject one more thing about the acetone cleaning. So I did have 100% acetone, and I think it comes off a little bit quicker than that nail polish Heather was using because it wasn't 100% acetone. However, friends, it is smelly. So my suggestion when you clean off a plate with acetone is to then give it a bath. So warm water, mild soap like a dish soap. Wash that acetone off as much as you can and then get it real nice and dry before you run it through your foiling machine again, because when you foil that up and it gets heat activated, it is pungent. Don't ask me how I know.
Yes. One question someone's asking there, can any dyes be used with the hot foil machine or does it have to be labeled hot foil? Leah did demo a normal dye. It's just not going to give you the same because cutting lines are really detailed.
Yes.
So it's not going to look the same.
You can use them. The look is totally different. So hot foil plates are designed, the lines are a little bit thicker. So you'll see that hot foiling a little bit more. Wafer thin dyes, the cut line is very, very thin. So what you're going to notice is going to be very, very subtle hot foiling. Yeah.
Yes. I think we covered the majority. I'm sure we missed questions as things were going by today. But feel free to go into that event we created. We've got a post on there for questions. If we missed anything today, leave them on there. We'd be happy to answer them on there.
I'm just doing a kind of a quick overview of the questions we had compiled here. And I think we really did cover most of them. I know that there were definitely some questions about the solid plate. But like I mentioned, we're going to have a class all on the solid foil plate, hopefully next week. Hopefully we'll see, but we will definitely let you know when it is. And that will answer all of your questions on the solid foil plate. So we decided to just do a brief overview on that solid plate so that we can do that more in-depth full hour on the solid.
Because we can easily spend an hour on that. And you can already see how much we struggled to hit the hour today on this.
But I think other than that, we hit pretty much every question other than Nikki Foraker, I could have said her name wrong, said, why does Heather Hoffman want me to be poor?
Sorry. Professional enabler.
We are 16 minutes over, but so we're going to let you guys go, but thank you for hanging in there with us and staying with us for as we went over a bit on this class, but we really wanted to make sure that we gave you as much info for hot foiling basics as we could to help you get going, to help you troubleshoot any issues you might be having hot foiling. And of course, you can leave questions on this live class video in the comments. We may not see it like immediately, but we are pretty good about coming back to the comments, every day or every other day or so. So we will answer them when we get to them.
Yes.
So that's an option. And you can also join our Facebook friends group and you can ask questions there too. And we see those as well. So keep those in mind for asking us questions if you have troubleshooting questions at all.
Yes. All right. I think that's it.
That's it. That is Hot Foiling 101 with Leah and Heather.
A brief, quick overview. We could do 2.2 or whatever.
I know, we really could. 201. Hot Foiling 201.
There we go.
All right, friends. Have a great rest of your Friday and a fantastic weekend. Hopefully, maybe if you have a foiling system, you are going to feel inspired to break it out and start foiling with it. So,
yes.
All right, friends. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.